Good morning. I'm Jocelyn, host of the group. I'm a pelvic floor physical therapist, and I am the owner of the Vagina Doc Physical Therapy and Wellness. And this morning, I wanted to talk about how to overcome persistent pelvic pain. So let's first define what chronic pelvic pain or persistent pelvic pain is considered. And I believe it's pelvic pain that is extended beyond 6 months. It's a very broad definition, but it can be so many different things, but it's all coupled into chronic pelvic pain. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I have had a absolute breakthrough in my life and in my career in kind of like an allegorical type of way that I think I can share my experience of getting to the other side and taking control versus letting just give my control to everyone else and expecting, like, blaming the world and expecting results and doing the same things over again and expecting different results. So I mentioned in the introduction that I almost quit treating people with pelvic health, or I almost completely gave up women's health because people with pelvic pain were literally taking a tube. If this is what I perceived it this way, they took a tube into my chest, into my soul, and sucked it dry. And so when I came home, I would sit on my couch and it was like I had no life in my eyes. I had given it to everyone else. And I get home and I would just cry because I just was like, this is what my life is. It's just all work. And these people are not getting anywhere and it's killing me. And so I am not one that is okay with negativity, like about it, in my own life. I'm not okay with that type of, that's not the life that I want to live. And so I did a lot of soul searching in how to understand all of the complexities that go into pelvic pain or any chronic pain condition, and how I could more effectively treat or create a presence for people in those different camps. So I read a couple different books, one being The Laws of Human Nature, one being Essentialism. There was a list of them, but it really, that helped me understand some of the traumas and pains that were either consciously or subconsciously sunk into the depths of people's tissues. And then it also helped me hold space. But hold that thought for a minute. So I went into business for myself in October of 2019. And at that time, I had done a lot of personal development, but that personal development was me as an employee, not as a business owner entrepreneur. So when I jumped off the bridge, which I like to call it because that's what it felt like, I nearly sunk. Nearly freaking sunk. And last night and yesterday, I'm a huge Above and Beyond fan because it's such an emotional, like, you listen to one of their songs and it really is an emotional journey. And I was listening to one of the songs or instrumentals that I remember walking in the park whenever I was about to leave, like, make the decision of leaving Arizona and moving back east to work for someone else, which my people in my corner were like, don't do it. You're making a mistake. You're going back to it. So thank you guys who are out there that did that. But I was listening to that song and reflecting, and someone came into my life and I didn't want to abandon that patient of mine. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just wait this out. And there's a reason why we meet the people that we meet, and I'm going to see it through. That woman basically pardon, like didn't actually slap me in the face, but basically slapped me in the face and was like a wake up call on my approach to business. And she just gave me enough essential advice to keep digging. But basically, whenever I went into business, I had my business coach, and he told me, he basically was like, Jocelyn, you are a baby, basically. You're new. This isn't going to happen like immediately. You have to have things in place, and no one's going to save you. You have to do this for yourself. Like, he literally, like, it felt like he was coming through the phone shaking me. And finally, I mean, I don't know. I put a post that I was hanging by my fingertips off of a cliff, like just hanging. But my purpose, like my passion for this stuff is just so big that I never lost belief that I can make it work. I mean, sure, there were hard times, but I never lost sight of what I was put on this planet to do. And that's what kept me, like, literally hanging by these small fingertips, nails. Something clicked. I finally started doing stuff for myself and stopped waiting for people to do stuff for me. I did stuff for me and not for what other people looking at me for. One of which was for my health. One which was just like basic. I didn't want to spend money even on my hair. And I mentioned this like not too long ago. Not that you guys could tell with my hairstyle, but this is my pandemic do. But just those small decisions, and then looking inward at some of the traumas that shaped like my fears and my beliefs, releasing those one by one, I got a little more air to put my hand up a little bit higher, to pull myself a little bit further up on the cliff. And then come January or February, I was off the cliff and climbing up the mountain again. And to be able to breathe again is absolutely just, oh my gosh. I mean, I never lost sight of my purpose. Like, I know exactly what I'm here to do with women's health, pelvic health. And that is the one thing that just kept me through this. Pushing through. But, oh my gosh, I know that my coach wanted to shake me. And some of you with pelvic pain, I just want to freaking shake you. Out of love, though. And here's why. Okay, hey Heather, I'm new here, not sure how I found this video. Did you have pelvic floor dysfunction, Jocelyn? You know, Heather, I did. I had a whole lot of pelvic floor dysfunction. And I had it as an athlete. I mean, the whole spectrum. Now, why did I have it? And this is what I'm going to kind of go into next. So looking back on my life, this is why I want to shake you guys, because I haven't been in all of your shoes. All of our journeys are different, for sure. No one's one pelvic pain journey is the same as the other. So let's just say why do I get on my podcast? Why do I get on here and talk I don't think I ramble, but sometimes I do. Why do I talk about pelvic health? Well, when I am treating a patient or coaching a client, I don't have time to explain the physiology of pelvic health, all the things that go into pelvic health. I have to stay in my lane, the physical health side of it, the rehab, the musculoskeletal, neuromuscular. But the reality is, guys, that oftentimes this stuff is secondary to something else. So what goes into it? Well, we have the psychological part. I'm not saying it's all in your mind, but we hold traumas. Our body holds traumas that we didn't process in somewhere. Sometimes that's in our tissues. Oftentimes it's in our tissues because it's a protective survival response to numb and to not deal with it. That's how our ancestors survive. That's how we evolved as a human species. But guess what? We're no longer running away from tigers. We're no longer threatened to be burned at the stake, or like, what did they did? Like chop people's heads off in public. We are no longer there. Women are not being burned as witches when we have orgasms. It's not happening. So we don't have to be in that state anymore. So psychological traumas, sexual abuse, physical abuse, things that you are not listening to yourself, things, shame-ridden things, being ashamed of some aspect of your health, whether that's sexual health, physical health, body image, how your relationships are, all of that stuff, if you're not processing, if you're taking on the saying of ignorance is bliss, as my mom would say, then that trauma and that shit is going to be held somewhere else. So for me, I had a lot of stress growing up as a kid. And I can tell you for a fact that it was held in my pelvic floor. And then just the way I was brought up around sex and all of that stuff. I mean, we didn't talk about it. If you guys want to hear a lot of my background, check out my podcast. I talk a lot about my journey in some of the episodes and how my issues around sex and urinary leakage. I've had painful periods my whole life until I don't have them anymore, but like growing up as a teenager, I missed school. I had to miss practice as an athlete. I just would bleed into my pants like almost every time. And it's just I've been through that. And then I had a sexual trauma which I numbed for years. And then like I didn't, as a growing up and as a teenager and as a woman, I would get, some would say that's good, like got attention from guys, like, but I didn't perceive it that way. Like, I didn't like being catcalled on the street. I didn't like that attention. That was really, I didn't like it. And it made me really insecure about my body. And so when it came to, you know, my sexuality and how I perceive myself as a sexual human, I could see that bleed through. So I remember like GI dysfunction, just I was probably in 9th grade, and just a whole bunch of shit that had nothing to do with pelvic health. Just, oh my gosh, I remember laying on the floor in the fetal position. It was in the middle of the night, just moaning, whining in pain, and I don't even think there was anything wrong. I was so just in an unhealthy state as a teenager that's how my body physically manifested. Now, I'm not saying when I said there's nothing wrong, but that's how powerful trauma is if we're not processing it and we're not taught how to do so. It's a really tricky topic. So I get on my podcast, I get on this because there's so much more than just the physical health side of it. So I talked about the psychological. Let's talk about physiological. I don't feel bad for you if you eat like shit, unless you don't have the education or the resources to do anything otherwise. Those of you, like if you're starving yourself unknowingly, which let's go back to this, like why are you doing that? Always goes back to the psychological stuff, body image. You might not even be conscious of it, of behaviors driven from when you were a baby, or maybe not a baby, but like really young. Disordered eating patterns, as for whatever reason, disordered eating is different than eating disorder. Disordered eating in female athletes because of pressure. You guys, I don't know if you ever saw the track and field scandal with Nike in the Oregon thing, where that girl came out of talking about the pressure that the coaches put on her. I mean, the gymnasts that are pressured to look a certain way, be a certain weight. Well, that is not good for the physiological for us physiologically. It's like our body's in a state of inflammation. Inflammation depletes certain nutrient or need something in our body, and that those whatever is being depleted is needed for proper neural function, proper hormonal function. So if you have interstitial cystitis and there's, let's just, all the other like certain things are ruled out, like, what are your habits, your eating habits around food, your mental status, your relationships with your parents, how you were brought up, what your relationships are with your kids, with your partner, how are you perceiving your roles, what is your job like? I know you guys are probably like, I've heard this over and over again. And well, guess what? I said that too. And I said that about my business as well. Oh, you tell me this all the time. And while I was listening, I wasn't really processing and going through it. And so I was looking for like an external solution, essentially. Okay, for business, I have a business coach. Or give me advice, tell me what to do. But until I looked inward, and I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to just be me and not worry about. I need to live my truth, and that will shine through with whatever I do. So I'm finding what that is. I'm a fantastic pelvic floor physical therapist, but because I'm not fantastic because of my skills, I'm fantastic because of the energy and the insight on a whole person, and acknowledging that I am not the only one here, and I bring in other people to help my patients. We do it as a collaborative effort. And I was fighting that. I was like, I need to be the only one. I need to be the one that is the healer. And that is not true, especially with pelvic pain. So I talked about the psychological, which is so deeply rooted, and so many of us are so blind to it and just not allowing ourselves to go there. Then I talked about physiological. So if your nutrition sucks, there's no, the things that I can do are going to make a little bit of progress. But those are when you get the quick fixes, and then the pain comes back. And then it just comes back with a vengeance. So in that case, I'm managing symptoms, which is okay, as long as we acknowledge that. As long as you understand that, and you're not coming in and saying, fix me, because I'm not fixing you. I'm just helping you manage your symptoms. I'm secondary. I'm a teammate. I'm not the captain. Okay, so physiologically, it is amazing what postpartum women do to their body, and I say amazing in the worst way possible. Like, the things that, from an eating and a like rush to lose the weight, rush to this, rush to that, it's just, you're holding yourself back that way. And until we get there, it might be a cycle. And so I don't want that for you guys. Now, I do want to acknowledge that there are certainly examples that totally debunk what I'm saying. Like, people are born or develop early autoimmune conditions, and that is a big challenge. And again, autoimmune is a physiological thing, and pelvic health is indefinitely going to be impacted because of the bladder, because of the GI system, because of all of that. And in that case, it's a totally different approach. But I can tell you, the people that I've treated, like with EDS, which is called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, POTS, rheumatoid conditions, those are really, for me, I really enjoy treating that. But if people come and see me and they're looking for solutions, but they are refusing to look inward, I can't do that. I can't do that for you. So those of you this is my process with pelvic pain. I've been there, I've been through the trenches, and I understand from a patient, and I understand from a provider. I have a way that I work with people. The first thing is you go from uneducated to educated. Mindsets, education on mindset and how the mind impacts our physical healing and pain problems. Awareness. What is the awareness of your emotions, your behaviors, your movement patterns, the way you hold tension, the way you think about food, the way you think about your sex, and all the things with pelvic health? Why do you exercise? Is it just for your weight? Or is it because it brings you joy? And what are your behaviors and habits around that? Physical status, that's where the education of, like, for example, I can educate you on how the hormone system works based on meeting your energy demands. So eating enough to what your body burns. Sexual status, sexual health, I can educate you on the anatomy. I can educate you on the sexual response. I can educate you on pleasure to some extent, on things to facilitate good sexual health. But that is the window that I bring in my teammates. Because I know with pelvic pain that I am not the captain. My patient is. I put that on there. They are the captain from day one. And if they don't accept it, I don't work with them. I refer them to someone else. But dietitian, I am not pro nutritionist most of the time, depending on what their background is, because Joe Schmo can go take a nutritional certification and say they're a nutritionist. And I'm very careful of what type of dietitian I work with. Someone that has to have similar values as mine, holistic, understanding that the body has a powerful, powerful ability to adapt and to overcome adversity. But you have to put things in place to set the system up to work well. Someone in mental health, sex therapist, trauma therapist, someone there if I can't get them started. I don't immediately refer because people just don't have the capacity to see all these people. So I have, the basics of how to get you started. And then body work. So I mentioned a lot of these things are secondary, like pelvic pain is secondary to an autoimmune condition or interstitial cystitis, inflammation of the bladder, or endometriosis. But can I just real quickly say that when I eat like an a-hole, my cramps and the way my back hurts before and during my first day of my period, mainly like right in the beginning, so much worse, like 100% worse than whenever I am doing well and I'm eating real foods, mostly whole foods, mostly vegetables, little meat, good meat, little sugar, little alcohol. So I ate like an asshole growing up. Here's a secret. My mom should already know this. I doggy bagged and threw away the vegetables in her dinner, and I ate Oreos, and I still performed as an elite athlete. But I crashed and burned. Periods were terrible. I was bitchy, moody, tired all the time, horribly stressed, and I ate like an a-hole. Horrible cramps. Horrible, horrible, horrible. Always in a state of inflammation. Periods ruined me during that month. But now I'm seeing like my periods are so much better. I'm very, very, very rarely sick. My stress levels are managed. My periods are so manageable. Holy cow. And it was amazing. Like the only way I know I'm getting my period, I mean, it's pretty regular now, is because my boobs hurt. And they get soup. They're like rock solid. It feels like I had gotten a boob job. But anyways, that's an aside. If you have, it's a very real thing to have endometriosis. But if your behaviors, your actions are essentially feeding that tissue, the endometrial excess tissue in your body, that's more inflammation, you feel like shit. I apologize for the swearing, but I get really energetic about this topic because, one, it's impacted me so much on a personal level, but also because professionally I see the patients that thrive and I see the ones that sink. And I've set it up so that I can really, really help someone on either side if they're open minded to all the work it takes. But yeah, so I'll get people started because I was such a nerd my in PT school, and basically, um, I basically studied double than what I actually needed to study because I was obsessed with women's health, obsessed with gender health, obsessed with physiology and rehab and exercise. And um, it was, I'm so glad I was that way because I feel that much more equipped as a provider now. I know where to go if I don't have the answers because I don't often have all the answers. But yeah, it's when you have chronic pelvic pain, you guys, you have to do a lot of self work. You have to ask yourself the really hard questions and understand we don't want understand that human nature, we do not want to look inward and admit that a behavior that we have been so just on autopilot like for our whole life, that is contributing to our symptoms. But here's the thing, there's no then the next step is, oh, I blame myself. Well, don't freaking blame yourself. Don't look external, look internal first. See what you can change. See that you could, what are you eating? Let me tell you this, money is not something that you can blame either, because I think I mean, I was so poor. Oh yes. So I got a comment from Vera about, you talked about a book a while ago in terms of nutritional info to help with all these issues. Can you share the name? The name is called Nutrition for Healing Pelvic Pain by Jessica Drummond. I'll put it in the comments right now. Nutrition for, I think you'll find it. Jessica Drummond. Now let me just say about this book. It is freaking intense. You got it. You can't. I know one patient, a patient of mine in the past, so brilliant, one of my favorite people of all time to treat. She read and did the dang thing, and she saw results. But I mean, it is a terrible, 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 terrible diet change because it's so intense. So that's not often the approach I take. I oftentimes do a graded approach because the body can respond, really adversely if you make that big of a change. So just as a tip. But yeah, when we're talking about pelvic pain, you guys, it's not just the physical side. And pelvic pain related to prolapse. Let's talk about prolapse first. That's a different ball game. I think if you got those of you that are on here or that watch this with prolapse, can you explain what the biggest issues are that you're having? Like, what is it? Like, is it because you're afraid? Is it because you're actually really symptomatic? What is it? And then can those of you, okay, I want to now talk about those of you that don't necessarily have endometriosis or IC, but you had like varicose veins, or you have vascular problems. One thing that I think is a tricky thing is pelvic congestion. What is that? Well, it's basically an impairment or with the pumps, the pipes in our body, particularly those around the pelvis and the legs, and blood is pooled in the pelvis. A way to think about that is think about the a long plane ride, or when both your feet are really swollen. How freaking painful is that? It's terrible. My flight to Sydney, I thought I was gonna die because my legs were so swollen. I was in so much discomfort. Imagine all that swelling was in your pelvis, where there's so many nerves, or your lower abdomen. That is a problem. So if that's one thing that I can help manage secondary symptoms. But try to work with someone that can prescribe something, or we can take a holistic approach that may or may not include meds to get that fluid out. Like, what can we do to get the blood back to where it needs to be? Like, do you need to wear compression panties or whatever, legs? We just need to problem solve through that. But pelvic congestion is BITCH, you guys. Okay, so thank you, Vera. So I asked about prolapse. She said fear symptoms can be pain, or some days dealing with incontinence, and it's hard for your brain to recognize that this is the new the this is me normal. This is my new normal. Okay. So fear. Fear. Let's talk about fear for one. But we're going to get to that. Symptoms is easier. Symptoms. I want to ask you, Vera, do you feel guilty about... Would you feel guilty if you had to if you couldn't heal yourself, or if you had to get, let's say, a prolapse repair? Would that make you feel guilty? Or a pessary, or something to adjunct rehab? What is it that... Help walk me through that with yourself. Because I know I've been there. Like, in December, I finally decided to go get help from another pelvic physical therapist. And there was obviously a psychological component to that. Like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I can't treat myself. BS. We're not meant to treat ourselves. Like, PTs included. In that way. Like, I had the education. I had that. It's okay to get help. So even with my whole thing that I just did this on, it's okay to get help. Okay. Yes, so much. Well, tell me more. What so much? What is it? Is it the getting help you feel guilty, or what be more specific? So I got help in December because I was feeling a lot of vaginal heaviness. Lots. And I felt it so much after I went to CrossFit and squatted and deadlifted. And I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, what am I doing to myself? Am I setting myself up for surgery? When I interviewed a urogynecologist for my podcast, I even verbalized the thing to her. In 2 visits, my pelvic PT helped get me on the right track of pelvic health, pelvic and abdominal, mainly abdominal flexibility, so that blood could get in and out, and my muscles could shorten and lengthen, and I didn't just have my vaginal tissues just bulge through because my muscles were too stiff to move. So relative flexibility, my muscles were way stiffer than my vaginal walls, and no wonder I was getting like those symptoms. But oh my God, I haven't had heaviness since, and I am not fearful anymore, and I am not ashamed that I got help. And now I was closed myself off as even being a sexual being, and now I feel like I'm just starting like this whole new sexual evolution and understanding what I need and what I want and what pleasure is. Okay, so I have a sink. I'm renting from my best friend, one of my best friends from Arizona. And the sink, it's like hanging down. And when I first moved here, her sister's like, you got to put that back up. And so, no problem, put it up, and it just stayed. But over time, it's not staying as easy. And now, like, I have to, like, shove it, and it's, like, just not staying. At what point in time do you just have to admit that this needs help, and it either needs replaced or something needs done, and what I'm doing is not enough? That's me telling her and her getting help. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing, Vera. I'm angry because now, after a while of watching you and doing research and reading, I know this comes goes back to when I was little. I never knew my childhood was a lot similar to yours in a way, and I'm sure there's a lot of emotional stuff connected to my issue, but I'm scared of looking for help and finding out that it's not fixable. I'm scared to hear, sorry, you will be dealing with this forever. Okay. So what she's saying is she's angry because she's enlightened of a lot based on what I'm educating you guys on. And she realizes that a lot of this stems back to childhood. Similar to my realization that a lot of my issues start from childhood. And we're recognizing that there is a huge emotional side that's connected to this. And it's scary to look for help because of the disappointment or the feeling that comes with. You just got to live with it. I totally can relate to that. And I know, Vera, that so many other people can relate to this. You're not alone. So, to that, number one, grief. Let's go through the process of grief. And I don't know what that is, but I think numbing might be one, then anger, then acceptance, and then something else. If anyone knows the overcoming that, like, grief, the full process of grief, can you put it in the comments? So a lot of us are stuck in the numbing, the don't want to know, ignorant phase. And so the longer we're there, the more we have to work through. It's okay to be angry, Vera. In fact, I want you to be angry, but I want you to get over it. I want you to get over it because I don't want you to get over it, but I want you to process that so you can move forward into the next phase. So here's the deal. Like I mentioned before, our bodies have a freaking and crazy ability to adapt and be flexible. Just look at the people that are doing insane things and they don't have any legs, or they have some sort of crazy condition, but they have adapted. Certain things just have to happen. There is no guilt or no shame in, going to rehab, figuring out that, this is what you can work on, but you do, like my sink needs, I think that spigot or whatever, the faucet needs fixed. This component needs a little more reinforcement. So this is the professional you're going to see. Then you're going to have to manage the injury that goes along with surgery, because like any surgery, they have to cut things. So those are just new injuries. These are the things that you're going to put in place. And then we're going to figure out a strategy to completely adapt to the new norm or to the new you. And the way you were before isn't going to serve you now. You have to do things differently. And that's okay. It's just understanding that the way you think, the way you move, the way you do things, it's all a journey and it's going to be new. And you just got to find the right providers or your team that serves you. And that's the challenge. So that's why this technology revolution is so amazing, because like right now, just connected with an adolescent medicine physician. So she is a board certified pediatrician, and she did a fellowship in adolescent medicine. And I was talking to her. She works in New York City, and she works for just like corporate healthcare or whatever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you realize like so many people you could be consulting with so many people in helping them. You're not their necessarily healthcare provider, but you're helping connect them with the right people. You're helping them put things in place while they find the right people. So even though, like, you might find people that you just don't vibe with, like their values, our healthcare system is so messed up in some ways and then so great in other ways, but there's people like me that are figuring it out. Like, how can I treat and serve the people I want to serve in a way that is going to be healing and not reverse? What is going to be healthcare and not sick care? And then you have to understand that spending money on yourself is just part of it. Like, that goes down to it. Like, for me, my excuse is I don't have the money. I don't have the time. Well, that is, you've got to make it right. Like, how can you save in places? Like, I don't have any money, but I took a $25,000 loan. Banging my head off the wall right now for business coaching. And as much as I just want to throw up about it, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't do it. So it's going to pay off, but it's just not one of those quick fixes. So, in summary, you guys with pelvic pain, stop looking externally. Chronic pelvic pain. And I'm talking like the symptoms of just like always in pain. It's so tricky, and I don't mean to come off callous, but like, my coach remember I told you I was shaking, my coach was shaking me. I'm shaking you, and I'm telling you, face the past, figure out what influenced you now, make peace with it, acknowledge it. Elena, the post that I post before, follow her podcast, Practice Your Practice podcast. Listen to her, the spoken word, and start today on putting things in place. What am I doing? What body image things? What shame is suffocating me from moving forward? Because you don't have to live this way. You might always have a little bit of pain. I'm not telling you you're not, but you're going to have tools and strategies to be resilient with it. That was a lot longer than I wanted to be, but I think I needed to just like tell you guys that. I tell you this out of love, not out of me being sassy. Well, I'm sassy, but I mean it, and I do this from the depths of my soul. Don't expect fast. We live such a long life. Just chip away at it. And remember, you are responsible for your own pleasure and your own pain. They're in the same area of the brain. If you want pleasure, you got to find out what's pleasurable for you. If you want pain or you want to change your pain, you have to take responsibility and not just seek external and blame. See you next time. Oh, before I forget, I'm actually starting a new group. This is going to be called Pelvic Health Education for Female Athletes and Active Women. I'm going to have another group that is paid, includes pelvic health, workouts with pelvic health education intertwined in it.